She went in for a routine eye exam. Glasses prescription, nothing urgent, and the optometrist looked at her retinas and said, "Has anyone talked to you about your blood pressure?" She didn't even know she had a problem with her blood pressure. That's the thing most people over 60 don't realize. Your eyes aren't just deteriorating on their own. They're reacting to what's happening in your blood vessels that run through your heart, your kidneys, your brain. And the retina is the only place in your entire body where a doctor can look directly at those vessels without cutting you open. Which means your eye exam isn't just an eye exam. It's a window into everything, and right now there are two conditions, both incredibly common, both highly manageable, that are quietly destroying the vision of millions of people over 60. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily, invisibly, in ways that don't announce themselves until the damage is already done. Most people have one or both of them. What they don't know is what those conditions are doing to their eyes. That's what this video is about. The first condition is blood sugar. And I want to be precise here, because most people think this only applies to them if they have diabetes. It doesn't. The damage starts earlier than that, earlier than most people's doctors catch it, earlier than most people are thinking about their eyes at all. Here's what's happening at the back of your eye right now. Your retina is fed by a dense network of tiny blood vessels, some of the smallest in your entire body. When blood sugar runs high, even modestly high, those vessels weaken. Their walls get fragile. They start to leak. Fluid seeps into the retinal tissue, causing swelling. New, unstable blood vessels grow to compensate, and those new vessels bleed. None of this is painful. None of it announces itself. Your vision may look completely normal while it's underway. That's what makes it dangerous. The condition is called diabetic retinopathy, and the statistics around it are sobering. About 1 in 3 people with diabetes over the age of 40 already have early signs of it. Already. Right now. Most of them don't know. After 20 years of living with diabetes, roughly 80% of people will develop some degree of retinal damage. But stay with me, because this is where it gets important for people who don't have a diabetes diagnosis. The CDC estimates that 115 million American adults currently have prediabetes, blood sugar that's elevated. Not diabetic range yet, but elevated. Running high enough to start stressing those tiny retinal vessels. And 8 in 10 of those people have no idea. They haven't been told. They feel fine. They're going about their lives, and their retinas are quietly taking the hit. The NIDDK puts it plainly. Finding and treating diabetic retinopathy early can reduce the risk of blindness by 95%. 95%. That's not a small number. That's the difference between a manageable condition and one of the leading causes of preventable vision loss in adults over 60. And the window to act, the window where treatment is most effective, where the trajectory can actually be changed, that window is open right now. Not after you notice blurring. Not after dark spots appear in your central vision. Now. Before any of that. So if you have been told your blood sugar is elevated, even slightly, even in the pre-diabetes range, and you haven't had a dilated eye exam in the last 12 months, that is the single most important thing you can do for your vision. Before anything else in this video, before any habit change or supplement or lifestyle adjustment, that exam, because you cannot manage what you cannot see, and right now there may be something happening in your eyes that is entirely treatable, and entirely invisible without the right test. The second condition is blood pressure. And this one brings us back to that woman at the start. She didn't have diabetes, her blood sugar was fine, but when the optometrist looked at her retinas, the blood vessels told a different story. They were narrowing, thickening, under sustained pressure, the kind that builds quietly over years without a single symptom, those vessels had started to change. This is called hypertensive retinopathy, and the numbers around how common it is will probably surprise you. In a meta-analysis of nearly 9,400 people with high blood pressure who underwent eye exams, 34% had mild hypertensive retinopathy. Another 8% had moderate. That's roughly 4 in 10 people with hypertension walking around with measurable damage inside their eyes, most of them without any idea, because in the early and moderate stages there are no symptoms. Vision looks normal, nothing hurts, nothing flags, and this is where the timeline matters, because high blood pressure doesn't do its damage in a single event. It does it over years. The data is stark. Having uncontrolled blood pressure for more than 5 years increases the risk of hypertensive retinopathy nearly 13-fold, 13 times. Duration is the multiplier. Every year of elevated, unmanaged pressure is another year the vessels are narrowing, stiffening, and losing their ability to deliver what your retina needs. What does that mean in practice? Your retina runs on blood flow. Oxygen and nutrients arrive through those vessels constantly. The retina is one of the most metabolically demanding tissues in the body, and it cannot store reserves. When blood pressure forces those vessels to narrow and harden, flow drops. Retinal cells that aren't getting enough oxygen start to die. And unlike a lot of cells in the body, retinal cells do not regenerate. And the damage doesn't stop there. High blood pressure raises the risk of wet macular degeneration, the aggressive form, by more than 4 times when pressure climbs above a certain threshold. It worsens diabetic retinopathy in people who have both conditions. It raises the pressure inside the eye itself, which feeds glaucoma. These conditions don't queue up politely one at a time. They compound. Here's the part that doesn't get said enough. Only about 1 in 4 adults with high blood pressure has it properly controlled. 1 in 4. The other 3 are managing it, meaning they know about it. They may even be on medication, but their numbers aren't where they need to be. And the gap between "I take a pill for that" and "my blood pressure is actually controlled" is exactly where the eye damage lives. High blood pressure was a primary or contributing cause of more than 664,000 deaths in the United States in a single recent year. But it's what happens in the decade before those events. The quiet, progressive narrowing of the world as the vessels degrade, that rarely gets talked about. Vision shrinks long before anything more dramatic arrives. Your eye doctor may be the first person to catch it, the way she almost wasn't. Start with blood sugar, and start with what's happening after meals specifically, because that's the window most people aren't thinking about. When you eat, particularly refined carbohydrates, white bread, white rice, anything processed and sugary, your blood sugar spikes sharply and then crashes. That spike, repeated multiple times a day over months and years, is exactly the pattern that stresses retinal blood vessels. Not just the average level, the spikes. Those swings up and down may actually be more damaging to small blood vessels than a consistently elevated level. Which means the person who thinks they're mostly okay because their fasting blood sugar looks reasonable could still be putting their retinas through significant stress at 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. every single day. 2 things cut those spikes reliably and without requiring a dramatic overhaul of your diet. The first is what you eat with your carbohydrates. Protein, fat, and fiber all slow how fast sugar enters your blood. A piece of white bread eaten alone hits your blood sugar very differently than the same piece of bread eaten with eggs, avocado, and a handful of vegetables. The total carbohydrate is the same. The spike is not. This is the meal composition piece, and it's one of the most practical and underused levers people have. The second is movement after eating. A 10-minute walk after a meal reduces post-meal blood sugar spikes meaningfully. Your muscles absorb sugar during movement without needing insulin to do it. So a short walk after lunch or dinner is essentially pulling sugar out of your bloodstream at the exact moment the spike would otherwise be building. Simple, free, no equipment. Now, blood pressure. And this is where I want to be direct about something people often resist hearing. Medication matters. If you've been prescribed blood pressure medication and you're not taking it consistently, or you've stopped because you feel fine, that decision is being made without accounting for what's happening in your retinal vessels. Feeling fine is not the same as blood pressure being controlled. The damage is happening whether you feel it or not. And the gap between 5 years of elevated pressure and 13 years is not a small one. Lifestyle moves the dial significantly too, sometimes enough to reduce medication needs, always enough to amplify what medication is already doing. Sodium is the most direct lever most people have. The average American consumes far more than the recommended daily amount, largely from processed foods and packaged items that don't taste salty but are loaded with it: bread, canned soups, deli meat, cheese. Reducing sodium intake by even a modest amount produces measurable blood pressure reductions within weeks. The English longitudinal study of aging tracked approximately 5,600 people over 14 years and found that blood sugar control predicted eye disease outcomes across all 4 major conditions: glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, and cataracts. Not just diabetic retinopathy, all 4. Which tells us the vascular pathway connects to every major way eyes fail as we age, not just the ones that have diabetes in the name. And then there's the number you need to know, not your general sense of whether your blood pressure and blood sugar are okay. The actual number. What is your most recent HbA1c? That's the 3-month blood sugar average, a single number that tells you whether your blood sugar is trending in a direction that threatens your retinal vessels. What is your blood pressure reading today? Not 6 months ago, today. These 2 numbers, tracked consistently, are the most direct indicators of what is or isn't happening inside your eyes between exams. Know them. Track them. Treat them like the vision numbers they are. I want to tell you what vision loss actually looks like when it arrives gradually, not the clinical description, what it looks like in a life. It starts with small things. Reading becomes harder in dim light. You start avoiding driving at night without fully admitting why. You need to sit closer to things. Faces across a room get harder to read. And because it happens slowly, over months, over years, there's a long period where you adjust, compensate, tell yourself it's just age, tell yourself everyone goes through this. And then one day, the adjustment stops working. The central vision that lets you see faces clearly, that lets you read a menu or a grandchild's school report or the expression on someone you love, that starts to go. And the people sitting across from those people, watching it happen, say the same thing over and over. They didn't know. They managed their blood pressure. They had diabetes under control, at least on paper. They just didn't connect it to their eyes. Nobody had ever connected it for them. That connection is the whole point of this video. The 95% reduction in blindness risk from early detection doesn't require a breakthrough treatment. It requires a dilated eye exam once a year. Knowing your actual blood sugar and blood pressure numbers, not just assuming they're fine. A 10-minute walk after dinner. Taking the medication that was prescribed. None of these are hard. What they require is understanding the connection, which you now have, and deciding to act on it. Book the exam. Get the numbers. Start this week. If this gave you something useful, subscribe. There's more coming on exactly this. What the research says about protecting your health after 60 without the noise. I'll see you in the next one.